Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for being here. That's a pleasure to have you to speak on such an important topic for us about measuring the impact of Ecolabel. My name is Leticia Monteiro. I work at UNEP, the United Nations Environment Programme on Sustainable Consumption and Production. So today we will discuss together for 1.5 hours. If you have questions, please write them in the Q&A. You will see down below on your screen, and our panelists will be happy to answer. We'll have a few minutes together to discuss and to have an open conversation on those topics. But I guess that by now we are all very much familiarized with Zoom, and this will not be an issue. So this is part of a series of webinars that we are organizing, and the topic is today to speak about the impact of eco-labels, and also we can say about certification schemes. And we think this is of great importance because we need to show impact. We need to show that things are changing, things are moving, and that those tools, eco-labels, are contributing to this change. And to be able to demonstrate that, we need to measure, to assess, and to show that this is really contributing to change the market, and as such to have an impact on our environment, or at least to reduce the impact of our consumption in our environment. Let me share my screen. Today, to discuss about this, we have our great panelists that you can see online and also here on the picture. So we will first have a presentation from Viviana Lopez and Tobias Sauter, both of them working at Eco Institute, researcher in this institution, and they will present a methodology that they have developed at Eco Institute on how to measure environmental impacts of eco-labels. We'll also have Gareth Johnston from the Global Ecolabeling Network. Thank you for being here. Gareth is coordinating the Global Ecolabeling Network, and he will present us also why this is an important topic for ecolabels. We are also really pleased to have with us Cao Jing. Thank you for being here. Cao Jing is the director of the new certification business. She's the in the development management department, and she's part of the China Environmental United Certification Center. And we are also very pleased to say that UNEP is collaborating with SEC, with the China Environmental United Certification Center, on developing criteria for textile products. And this is also an ongoing initiative that we have. And you will also hear about another experience, the one of EPIT, but unfortunately, Catherine Larrock was not able to join us, but she sent us a recording, so we will also share that with you. Here, actually, you can see the agenda of today. So I'll not, in interest of time, I'll not enter again in detail because I already shared a little bit with you what our panelists will be presenting. But you can see here, and you can see perhaps something that is of interest to you, all participants, is that we have sometimes for Q&A, one slot after Eco Institute present the methodology for quantification of environmental benefits, and also at the end for our panelists. So now I'll start also explaining to you all who is gathering us today, or perhaps rather to say which initiative. So we have today two initiatives that are bringing us together, the Eco Advance Project and the Consumer Information Program. And I will start by introducing to you all the Consumer Information Program. So the Consumer Information Program is part of the One Planet Network. This is a multi-stakeholder platform where all together governments, private sector, institutional organizations, civil society, everyone, the entire society work together to achieve the SDG 12 on sustainable consumption and production. In this One Planet network, we have 4 areas of excellence. And the one that is here today organizing this event is the Consumer Information Program. And this year, we are pleased to have the 10 years of the Consumer Information Program. So what do we do with this within this Consumer Information Program? We have 4 working groups. One on providing product sustainability information. So we see how we can support businesses to improve the way they communicate the information about sustainability to the consumers. So working group 1. The working group 2, we work with ecolabels and certification schemes, so third-party certification. And this is the one that has been contributing to organize this webinar today. We have the working group 3 working on product lifetime extension. And the working group 4 that is focusing in particular on biodiversity. So how businesses can improve their communication to inform consumers about the impact on biodiversity of their products. So those are the 4 working groups. And I'm sharing all this to you because we are inviting you to join us and to contribute. There are several ways of being involved. You can obviously join our webinars, our events, our presentation. We are also bringing sometimes some technical assistance on specific topic. We have a website with many tools that are of interest, many publications, a newsletter. If you are a member of the Consumer Information Program, we are also happy to share your own news to our network. We have more than 1,000 experts that have registered, and we have also social media. So this is just to show you in a nutshell what the Consumer Information Program is doing, and again, inviting you to join us. So this is one initiative. And we have the second one that's in bringing us today, the Eco Advance project. And Eco Institute that will deliver the presentation is also a partner of the Eco Advance project together with GIZ. The Eco Advance project is funded by the Ministry of Environment of Germany, and the objective of this project is to see how eco-labels and sustainable public procurement can contribute to protect our climate, our biodiversity, and also contribute to more resource efficiency. Within the Eco Advance project, we are doing many things, but what I want to emphasize today is that we are highlighting good practices and we want to replicate them. And this is what we are doing here. So you will see that we have developed quite a lot of good practices, and I will show them now to you. Here they are on the screen. But what I want also here to emphasize is that if they are of interest to you, please reach out to us, write to us, and we'll be happy to discuss how concretely we can support you in implementing them. So you see, we have them on several topics. One is raising awareness, and the webinar today is about this, measuring the environmental impact of ecolabels to raise awareness. And we have another one also on how ecolabels and certification schemes can educate consumers and companies about what they are doing, and showing impact is obviously one key aspect of this. We have developed good practices on how ecolabels and sustainable public procurement are linked. We have also good practices on supporting tools. So for example, recognition scheme or pre-approved list of ecolabels, how governments have developed this. E-marketplace, e-catalog, we already had a webinar to present those tools, e-marketplace and e-catalogs. And finally, the final section is on biodiversity. And here again, we have already organized a webinar to see how countries can, in their NBSAP, in their National Plan for Biodiversity, how they can integrate public procurement and ecolabels. So just a few topics to show you what we can, how we can support you, and hoping that you will read the one that are of interest to you, and again, inviting you to reach out to us. So now I'll really briefly present you the good practice that we've been doing on measuring the environmental impact of ecolabels. So this is a really short publication. I will say perhaps it's 10 pages, so inviting you to have a look at it. Now I will not enter in details because our panelists will do so, but it's just here to emphasize that again, it's really, this topic, it's really important. So in July, we'll organize an event in Latin America, in Brazil, and we will there in this event have a back-to-back workshop to train entities interested on this topic. So also, if you are available to join us in July in Brazil, and we will share the information in due time, we'll be also more than happy to have you in this training, in this workshop, to concretely support you in measuring the impact of your ecolabel. So in our short publication, we have showcased the case of EPIT, the Korean ecolabel, Green Pro, it's an Indian ecolabel, and the China Environmental Labeling Program. And here, because we have already two speakers that will present their program, I'll just show you really briefly, and allow me to go a bit quickly here. The Korean ecolabel, so for example, in their case, they have been measuring the impact on CO2 reduction. And also they have assessed the economic benefits linked to environmental impact reduction. So for example, this is linked to contamination of the water, air contamination also, that obviously has an impact on our health and then a cost. So just to show you what they have been measuring, and also job creation. So the case of Korea is really interesting. And this is Green Pro, the Indian ecolabel. And in the case of Green Pro, they have been measuring, they have developed criteria for cement and related to CO2 emission. They have been able to measure the impact, and it's equivalent to a yearly reduction of 6.5 million tons of CO2, which is the equivalent of the emission of Nicaragua or Luxembourg. So quite an important impact. And again, here really quickly, as I was saying, this is another good practice, but this one is on how certification schemes can show and share to both consumers and companies their impact. This is really important because obviously it helps to show the importance of ecolabels. And here, again, allow me to go quite quickly on this. I just wanted to show you the EPIT example. This is information that is available online. So if we look here, we can see what has been the reduction for the United States governments based on their purchase of EPIT certified products. You can see here the reduction of GHG emission, of CO2 emission, energy savings, hazard waste, and primary materials. So really a nice way of communicating that, but again, I do not enter in more details here because we'll have the presentation of Catherine Larocque. Here, I'm sharing this because you will be able to access all the information, all the knowledge products that we are developing within the EcoAdvance project. And this will be circulated after the webinar, so you will have access to those links. And again, inviting you to have a look at what we have been doing so far. And here I thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen. And I will invite our colleagues from Eco Institute, Viviana and Tobias, to present their methodology. Thank you very much, Vivian and Tobias.
Thank you very much, Letitia, and welcome everybody also from our side. My name is Tobias Sauter, and I will give the presentation together with my estimate distinguished colleague Viviana, who you can see next to me. Just a quick word about Öko Institute for those who don't know us. Öko Institute, or full name Institute for Applied Ecology, is an independent European Environmental Institute. We were founded in 1977 already, so even before I was born, and nowadays we have 200 persons working for Öko Institute in Berlin, Darmstadt, and headquarter Freiburg, where I'm located. And we do around about 350 to 400 projects every year on behalf of ministries, European Union, GIZ, etc. Personally, I'm an economist, an environmental economist, and I've been with Öko Institute for 13 years now. Before I was with a sister institute, so I'm working in the field for 15 years now in the field of sustainable products and material flows with a focus on circular economy and waste management here in Germany, but also on the African and the Asian continent. And in this context, also I'm supporting also a little bit the project in Latin America. Maybe, Viviana, you want to say a couple of words about you, who you are, what you do before we start giving the presentation so that everybody knows who we are.
Yes, sure, Tobias. Yeah, my name is Viviana Lopez. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. I'm a researcher also in the Department of Sustainable Products and Material Flows, and have been working in the Eco Institute for the last 6 years now. And I am actively supporting or involved in the project EcoAdvance Latin America, especially in the topics of eco-labeling, criteria development, and sustainable power procurement. So I'm happy to be here. And Tobias,
Yes, I will take over from here. What's the problem? What's the background? I mean, it's the COP going on this week in Azerbaijan, and we're all aware of the triple crisis. So you can quickly click until the full picture is there, Viviana, please. So we have global warming. We have excessive land consumption, species extinction, and environmental pollution. Right-hand side, you see the rock stream, the Rockström graphic, and that is actually about the planetary boundaries. And we, in 2023, last year, when the last update was given, 6 planetary boundaries were crossed, others to follow quite soon. We have consumption of raw materials that has tripled worldwide since 1970, massive social human rights abuses and risks in the supply chain of energy and raw materials. So this is where we stand. This is where we start, just to set the scene. Next slide, please. So this is, I mean, a bit provocative what you can see left-hand side regarding the climate crisis, the first of those 3 crises, and even we see in papers like The Economist, it says say goodbye to 1.5 degrees. Actually, many researchers are of the opinion that we are currently about to cross the 1.5 degrees border. And also we are faced with extreme weather that are related to climate change. Our bottom, you see a picture that we've seen 2 weeks ago in Spain, for example. So we have the national commitments, renewable energy, energy efficiency, and reduction of deforestation. However, according to this publication, we would still be somewhere in the business as usual world, 4 to 5 degrees temperature rise until 2021, like end of the century anyway. So keeping products, materials in the loop would bring us down to maybe 3 or 2 degrees, but then we are of the strong opinion that we also need other measures, even more renewable energy, more energy efficiency, something that is very often neglected, efficiency, because it's not tangible, you can't see it, and reforestation even. Next slide, please. So regarding consumption of resources and land use, you see two pictures. Left-hand side, excessive consumption of raw materials or extraction of raw materials, and also land use change, left-hand side in the context of palm oil. This graph shows actually how much land use and resource extraction has increased over the course of the last 50 years. In 2019, it's reported that the world has consumed 100 billion tons of resources, and by 2050, it's projected that we will extract 170 to 194 billion tons. And even in the past 6 years, here more than 500 billion tons of virgin materials were consumed, 70% more than what the Earth could safely replenish. This is so. The question we want to discuss with you today is, does eco-labeling really have a positive impact on this? Next slide, please. Where are we with eco-labels in the whole transformation logic, in the logic of the theory of change? If we look into products and the sustainability of products and take any indicator, could be energy efficiency, could be other indicators, going from a very low performance left-hand side in red to very high performance right-hand side, and having a distribution of products on the markets. We have standards, mandatory standards to cut the least sustainable products, left-hand side, and the typical instrument here in the EU at least is eco-design with mandatory minimum requirements. And then having also more informative incentivizing instruments such as the energy label that is also mandatory. And coming to the right-hand side where we have a very high, should have a very ambitious standard in terms of sustainability, we come to eco labels. In Germany, it's the Blue Angel. In Gen, we have many other eco labels that follow this approach to label for industry, because industry wants to show that they have the best available technology. But connecting it actually with GPP means leveraging the market and pulling the market from left to right here. So this is where we are with eco-labels and how eco-labels work as ambitious standards in terms of environment, goes also in terms of, hopefully in terms of social aspects. Next slide, please. So what is the starting point? Very often products are no longer produced only for national markets, but also marketed nationally. And therefore we were asked in the context of measuring the benefits of eco-labels to do a study for the German Federal Agency of Environment on the methodological challenges for eco-labeling in the global eco-labeling network. The study was realized between 2017 and 2020. But however, I mean, it's 4 years old, but we are still of the opinion that the general approach still holds. We would still recommend that general approach, and my colleague Viviana will lead you through the main principles today. Only the main principles of this of the study and of our recommendations, because otherwise it gets way too complicated, I'd say. And I think there will be a follow-up webinar on the details, at least within the Eco Advanced project, as far as I know. Two challenges that were identified: the integration of sustainability aspects of raw material supply chains. That was one aim, but the other aim was what we want to talk to you and discuss with you today, the measurement of performance of eco-labels, and we developed a practical solution that can be applied in the activities of eco-labeling programs, for example. Next slide. How do we do that? Sometimes because of the lack of data, we need to look into potential benefits only and set up what-if scenarios, or what we say potential scenarios. So what if everybody would buy eco-labeling or eco-labeled products based on specific LCA data based on a specific energy savings or better environmental performance, we can say what the world would look like if. That is actually the worst case of measuring. And we this is something that we can always calculate, but we have to be aware that it's only a potential. Reasons for measuring the performance are the demonstration and communication of achievements of ecolabel products or ecolabel schemes as a whole. For real environmental benefits, however, we need data. And therefore, we need the absolute number of ecolabel products or even the market share. We can turn to license holders. In Germany, we could turn to the RAL, that is the institution responsible for the German ecolabel, and try to find out what the market share actually is, and then differentiate in environmental impacts between certified products and non-certified products, so-called benchmark products. And from there, we derive an estimate, actually. For us, in the recommendation, is very important that the assessment is cost efficient because eco-labeling schemes do not have a lot of time and money to carry out the assessments. Therefore, we make this the following approach, or we make the recommendation of the following approach, and are of the opinion that there could be a promising approach to measure the performance of eco-labels. That was some introductory words. I hope it was not too long. I wanted to mention some measurements by eco-labeled schemes that are GEN members. The Environmental Choice in New Zealand actually reported 21,000 tons of greenhouse gas savings based on certified toilet papers. And there are also a couple of other good practice examples. I will not read them out. They are just there, or we just want to display them to you to show that there is good practice around and that you can study. With this, I would hand over to my colleague Bibiana and to lead us through some cornerstones, some milestones of the methodology before I wrap up in the end.
Thank you, Tobias. So now going into the more concrete details of the methodology developed in this project for the German Federal Environmental Agency. So we're going to go a bit more in technical details. Again, this is an introductory webinar for the methodology, so we will have the opportunity to go deeper into this specific topics later, also in the context of the project EcoAdvance and during the regional conference next year in Brazil. So we want to present this pragmatic approach with emphasis on pragmatic. As we already said, it was very important to us that it's something that it could be usable and without in the normal activities or with the resources and staff that are available in the eco-labeling scheme. Specifically, this was developed together with GEN partners, members. So yeah, just to give you an overview of this methodology. So we define a procedure or propose a procedure including these steps, so general aspects, and then I will go into all of these different points today very briefly. So let's go and take a look first at what are the basic principles and concepts that should be considered in environmental assessment. So the most important principle is life cycle approach, or based on the methodology of life cycle assessment. So, of course, if we were to look into the very detailed environmental impacts of any product, one approach would be to perform comparative life cycle assessments of different products. But again, this is an approach that is very time consuming and resource consuming, and also requires a lot of very deep and technical understanding of many product groups and the methodology itself. This is why we recommend the life cycle approach, and this means thinking about the different stages of the life sorry, the life cycle of a product, and considering what are the inputs and outputs that are involved in this whole process or in this whole life cycle. The other concept or principle is the functional approach. So basing the calculations or the understanding of the impacts in a functional unit. And this means you cannot compare products just like that, but based on the function they deliver. So in this case, let's take a lamp or a light bulb, and in reality, the function is the brightness that they give or the illumination, and this is measured in terms of lumens or watts. So this is why if you're comparing to different light bulbs, you need to understand where is if they are fulfilling the same level of brightness. So this would be, for example, a functional unit to determine, and this will be done or defined at the beginning of the process for the products that are in focus. So other concepts that are important here are the different phases of a life cycle assessment. The life cycle assessment is standardized already by the ISO standard 14040 from 2006, and these are the stages, as you see here on the right, that are defined. So it's a standardized process, and again, this we are not proposing that Ecolabels perform life cycle assessment or at least full, but the principles that we will take here in this methodology are based in this big methodology. There are also concepts like critical review, which is that when external actors verify that the study or the calculations are done consistent with the LCA principles, and this, of course, enhance credibility of the results. And also, one important concept here is the embedded and embodied emissions. So, the embedded emissions are the impacts of a certain material or product that are coming with it while once already produced, and then the embodied emissions refer to the impacts in the manufacturing, distribution, so what's coming after. Yeah. So we're going to start with the general aspects. I'm not going to go into detail of all of this. One basic or the first step will be to define which is the target group. So why we are calculating this impacts of the eco labels for whom is important to define at the beginning if we're going to use it for internal or external communication. And of course, depending on that, we will define if or recommend to be, for example, for external communication to be more conservative and then to have very concrete results or points that are to be communicated, for example, to customers. Also, the time period of the calculated savings, this is important to define a specific time. So let's say in the last 5 years or during this year. And also one important point here is the data quality. Why? Because this defines completely the quality of the calculation and the results and the reliability. So let's take a look at a couple of examples in this aspect of data quality. And one of them is the temporal correlation. So for example, if we have a study of lamps performed or done a few years ago, we can take a look at it and understand the if the consumption patterns or the use patterns do still apply. Normally, this will not change so much over time. For example, how customers behave in terms of their how long they turn off on the lights every day. But we should take a look, for example, if the technological aspects do still apply. So a halogen light bulb is very different from an LED and new technologies. So this could be or needs to be adjusted, for example. And there's the other aspect of data quality, which is the geographic correlation. So understanding products were produced in a country A and used in a country B, we will need to understand and consider the embedded emissions coming from country A, for example, something product produced in China or in Europe, but being used in Latin America, for example. So This is a combination of factors that need to be considered when we are proceeding with the calculation. So the second or the one of the next steps is the identification of the most successful product groups. So this will be one step to understand which products should we focus on for the calculation. There is no absolute definition of what is a successful or product group. So this is up to each ecolabel scheme to define. But here I show you possible criteria. This is not exhaustive. License holders which are open for cooperation or the highest demand and consumption in all of the categories offered by one eco-labeling scheme. So this is also important that there is a scoping process or step before moving into the calculation, because of course this could be time consuming, and we should focus on the more relevant products. The next is the calculations of the environmental savings per product. So this is per se the core of the methodology. The first thing would be to select which is the representative product. So here you see, for example, for the product group recycled paper of Blue Angel, there are several categories, I think 19 sub-product groups in total. And then we decide to focus on copy paper. This is a decision that will go into this pragmatic direction of simplifying the calculation. And for that, we will need to define what is the characteristics are of an eco-labeled product versus a reference product. So, for example, considering what criteria are fulfilled by the products with a label, with an eco-label, versus what are the legal requirements, and also taking a look, for example, for the reference product, what are the average products existing on the market in terms of technical specifications, for example, or standard characteristics. Here I show you two examples again, going back to copy paper. So let's say an eco-labeled copy paper product will be, let's assume for the calculation that at least has 50% of recycled content. And when we are comparing with a reference product, we just assume there is 0% of recycled content. For energy consuming products, you see on the right an example of refrigerators. Let's see, we will take a look, for example, at the distribution of products in the market. So here you see refrigerator classes depending on the EU energy label. So let's see if we look at the right. I mean, these are quite old data, but if you see 75, 72% of the products are in the category A plus, according to the graph. So this is the product I will take as reference product because it represents the average in the market. But if I'm going for an eco-labeled product, I will take the characteristics of products that are in the upper part. So this 4% A plus plus. This has changed since then. The EU eco-label has been recategorized, so now it doesn't have it's again A to G, I think. So this was just to provide an example, so you have an idea. So let's continue. The next step in this calculation of products of environmental savings per product is selecting which of the life cycle stages are the most relevant. Not all life cycle stages are relevant for all products. So, for example, again, for an energy consuming product, the use phase will be, of course, very important because it's where the most emissions come. But it depends. For example, on ICT products, the production stage is also very important. The raw material production and acquisition is also very important because of the key minerals that are embedded in the product. But for example, for a non-energy consuming product, we will focus, let's say, in the production and raw material phases, and maybe depending on the components, the end of life will be useful or relevant. So it's kind of like a matter of selecting the relevant, and we don't need to cover everything. Again, the relevant life cycle stages will be clear already, we assume, by each ecolabel scheme, because this is something that should be considered already since the process of criteria development. So this is something that has been identified previously. Let's move on to the next. So here again, I show you a couple of examples. Light bulbs are energy consuming products, so the embedded impacts are also important because of, or they could change depending on the different technologies. For copy paper, the raw materials and the use are in the production are important, but the use phase of a paper is not as important because this would be allocated, for example, to other product groups like a printer or a copy machine that are used in the paper. So then we select the relevant impact categories. So as you say, as you know, in a full LCA, there are many impact categories that could be the focus of the process. But then here is a matter of selecting which are important or which do we want to communicate. If we go into this simplification approach, the simple is the green global warming potential. Sorry, GWP, because this is the indicator for which most data is available, but also depending on the product group, you could choose to focus on, for example, avoided resource consumption or negative effects. Again, here a couple of examples. So for example, other products like detergents, focusing and calculating and communicated ecotoxicity would be a good idea. For copy paper, you can calculate the global warming potential, but also the amount of avoided virgin paper through the recycled content. So these are just examples. Then we move to the quantification of environmental impacts, and here the basic concept is to compare the impact of a calculate the impact of a relevant the relevant stages selected for a reference product and compare them with the relevant stages for a eco-labeled product. So it's kind of like a minus plus minus game, and to after this comparison to have the total. And where do I get this data from? So here there is a bunch of examples. There are studies that are available, scientific papers, studies being produced all the time, but also, for example, for many legislations, there are background studies being prepared. We have here, we almost very often produce examples for, or these preparatory studies for the EU legislation processes, also for the development of GPP criteria and eco-label criteria. There are also studies that are prepared, and there you can find different technical specifications and information about impacts. And also there are many benchmarking initiatives. If your country, your region has some of these benchmarking initiatives. In Germany, we have Eco Top 10, and then you can find also kind of like information about what are the best available products on the market, which are certified and which are the standard products. Okay, for LCA data, we recommend looking into country-specific electricity generation data and also taking from existing studies, or accessing to open or commercial database. So I will go fast into this because this is kind of like just looking into, okay, once we have the data of the different products and what are the savings by one product, then we should just determine how many products have been sold for this eco-label, for this scheme. And this could be done in different ways. It could be also done by what if, but the actual savings, of course, will be calculated on the basis of the number of sold products units. And here we present different ways of calculating this. And then finally, we just take the difference of environmental impact between the eco-label and the reference product, and then multiply by the number of sold products, and then we have the overall environmental benefits of this eco-label for this product group. So from here, and I give Tobias the time to present a couple of examples.
Yeah. Thank you, Viviana, for leading us through the methodology. I would just add some examples to and wrap up. Next slide, please. Why, as an example, I would like to focus on air conditioners. Why are we looking into air conditioners? As you said, when Viviana, when we should look into the selection of product groups, of course, we should look into relevance. We know that more than 30% of CO2 emissions, as an example, which is an impact CO2 emissions worldwide, are due to buildings, and we can have an impact on energy consumption in buildings by better insulation, for example, but also looking into the technologies. Here where we are located is very much heating, but in other climate zones it's very much cooling. And what we did a study also a couple of years ago to look into ecolabel criteria. So that's actually the standard already for air conditioners, and selected two very, very relevant. Actually, we designed criteria for all the categories that you can see here, from energy efficiency to the refrigerant, which is the chemical that is inside the air conditioner to make it work. And that is actually very relevant, that chemical, because it can come with a very high global warming potential, and also a couple of other criteria. But for the measurement of the benefits, we actually looked into two criteria here: energy efficiency and the refrigerant, and compared. And so the first step would be, selection of a product group. It's relevant. Let's look into ACs. As you mentioned very well, Viviana, that we looked into a reference unit, business as usual unit, a unit that is not certified by an ecolabel. So in this case, a single split air conditioner, the ones that we are all familiar with, the condenser and the evaporator, single split system with a very, very global warming potent refrigerant. A refrigerant, I don't know by heart, but it has I think our 410A has a global warming potential around 3,000 times higher than CO2, and no other environmental criteria. And compared that with an air conditioner that's certified under Blue Angel, that has a that uses the natural refrigerant propane R219, and it is quite energy efficient. So this is the first step on the product level. So what do we do with this? Next slide, please. We looked into or let's say, as you said, Viviana, we need to look into the life cycle stages, and energy efficiency, of course, relates very much to the use phase, but also we looked into end of life, because knowing that ACs are very, very often not properly dismantled at the end of life, or even leak the refrigerant during the use phase, we can see on the specific scale very considerable energy and then related greenhouse gas emission savings. In a moderate climate, we don't need air conditioners so much as compared to tropical climate. Can save 30% as compared to, in this case, it was Blue Angel certified product, up to 50% of greenhouse gas emission savings. Next slide, please. We did a similar exercise in several projects in Asia, but also in Latin America, looking into these savings, and chose more than one product. We chose from our perspective, most relevant 20 products and product groups, from air conditioners to interior lighting, street lighting, etc. The specific global warming potential savings were very high in textiles, plastic packaging, and office furniture. Which is not, what is not displayed here is we also took and assumed market shares because of lack of data, and looked into cumulative CO2 emission savings, which is possible. However, already by selecting a couple of clear standards, we can see that, can show and display how beneficial our eco-labeling schemes are. A couple of final considerations to wrap up. The first one would be, yes, it comes here. Although other indicators such as number of products, number of applications for the certification, consumer awareness, etc., 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 may be much easier to measure, they do not provide reliable and quantifiable information on the true environmental benefits. That's number one. But secondly, the purposed methodology, the methodology that we showed, allows the demonstration and the communication of the benefits of certified products. Remember the air conditioner example. In order to raise awareness among policymakers, even if you don't have actual data, you can set up what if scenarios and say, if, I don't know, 10% or 20% of the products were certified under this clear standard, and then even connected with green public procurement for as an example, the impact would be very, very high. Number three, the environmental benefits has to be pragmatic and applicable on a regular basis. Therefore, we propose that simplified method, not going too much into detail. I mean, we will go in a follow-up webinar, go more into detail how to make the proposed methodology workable, how it works, but it should be applicable. The formulation of quantifiable and measurable eco-label criteria is a prerequisite for calculating environmental benefits. You see finally that the results are quite impressive. So we don't have to hide. Once we have a clear, how can I say, clear standards, ambitious standards behind our eco-labels, we can display the benefits. And with this, I would like to close. Thank you for your attention. It was a bit longer than proposed. Thanks for having us, and we're open questions for sure.
Thank you very much, Viviana and Tobias. That was really interesting to see how concretely you've been able to measure the impact of those eco-labels. If you look at the chat, there are a few questions, but in interest of time, I would like to rather give the floor to Sek and to Ms. Cao Jing. But please, Viviana and Tobias, and I've seen that you've already been doing so, answer through the chat. There are some very interesting questions. And thank you to participants for being so active. So without further ado, please, Ms. Cao Jing, join us, turn on your camera, and my colleague, Mylis, I believe, will share the screen, or you do it yourself. Let us know how this works best for you. Welcome,
yes,
Jing.
can you see my screen, my
yes.
slide?
Yeah, it works perfectly well. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm Cao Jing from China Environmental United Certification Center. And thank you very much for inviting me to the webinar. And now I would like to share with you the development of China's environmental labeling and how its impacts are evaluated. And my presentation mainly have 4 parts. They are the development of China environmental labeling, the mechanism of evaluation, and the indicator system, and the environmental benefits evaluation result. First, I would like to briefly share the origin and the development of China environmental labeling. China's former National Environmental Protection Agency launched the China Environmental Labeling Program in 1994, and the aim was to build a green bridge between the government, businesses, and the consumers by sharing information about products' environmental impacts. The green logo on the left side left side of the slide is China environmental labeling logo. At the same time, it is a registered trademark of the China Ministry of ecology and environment of China. And now, over 30 years of development, the Ministry of Ecology and the Environment has ensured 132 environmental labeling standards, and with 109 still valid today. A total of nearly 6,000 companies have been certified, and over 3.6 million product models have received the standard environmental label. Consumers' recognition is gained in industries such as construction materials, printing, electronics, automotive, and chemicals. So in order to effectively measure the impacts of the environmental labeling, provide decision-making support for the Chinese government, and provide reference to the industry's emission reduction targets. And since 2014, the former Ministry of Environmental Protection assigned us a CEC to collect data while implementing the environmental labeling program. And secondly, how China environmental label leading to various impacts. Before setting the evaluation indicator system, we need to first understand the internal mechanism of evaluation. And with comprehensive analysis, we found that there may have three aspects affecting the environmental labels impacts. First, the whole life cycle design concept of the standards, which is the foundation that leads to positive impacts. And second, science-based setting of technology index value. The standard limit value is set as a level that the industry's top 20% or to top 30% advanced products can reach. And with that, the value can play a leading role in the certain industry. And because the value is set stricter than the national standards indicators, it is regarded as the direct factor that environmental labeling can lead to benefits. And the third, strict implementation is necessary to ensure sustainability. And based on the analysis, we then ensure that our evaluation is data-based, namely based on the data collecting from certified products and enterprises. Through data analysis, social investigation, expert discussion, and from environmental, economic, and social perspectives, we evaluate the impacts of environmental labeling using qualitative or quantitative method. So, how we exactly make the evaluation? Now, I would like to share the indicator system which we build. The indicator system is divided into three layers: environment, economy, and society. Each grade 1 indicator is followed by several grade 2 indicators. The first layer, environmental benefits, is an evaluation matrix, which is calculated to obtain quantitative data. Economic and social benefits are characterization indicators, which are qualitative evaluation indicators. Through the collection of relevant information, we can make judgment of a certain result. And from the perspective of environmental benefits, the evaluation refers to direct benefits like pollution reduction, carbon reduction, and resource conservation. We compare different indicators such as air and water pollutants, solid waste, energy efficiency, and resource conservation to assess improvements by applying national or industry standards of China. We also examine manufacturers' incidents of environmental violations to measure their compliance before and after certified. And from the perspective of economic benefits, the evaluation involves analyzing the past rate of environmental label products in recent sample tests to assess quality improvement in related industries. We also examine changes in production and output value of certified products and the overall competitiveness of the industry. And from the perspective of social benefits, the evaluation focuses on the label's role in supporting government green purchase and increasing the supply of green products in the market. And next, I will introduce the quantitative evaluation methods and the evaluation result. And in calculating the impact on reducing pollution and carbon emission, the evaluation is based on the features of different industries and products. The environmental labeling standards include several quantitative indicators, which several typical ones just showed in the slide. The indicators such as air and water pollution control, solid waste and chemical control, and energy and resource conservation indicators. All these indicators together help us assess and improve the environmental performance across various sectors. And according to these indicators measuring different aspects, we mainly have two basic methodology to do the evaluation, namely difference method and direct conversion method. The different methods used in measuring pollutant emission reduction. And this slide is showing the equation. This method takes the indicators involved in the environmental labeling standards as the object, compares limit values of national or industry standards, combines with the production or volume of environmental labeling products, so as to evaluate the environmental improvement after implementing the standards. And the next one, the other one, direct conversion method. You can see the equation on the screen. This method is for the situation where the evaluation indicators are complete substitution or recycling, such as recycled toner cartridges. By default, the baseline value is 0. After implementing environmental label certification, the change in indicators is exactly the environmental improvement. And based on the evaluation system and the formula just introduced, we get the results of carbon reduction. Please have a look at the table I just showed in the screen. This is a summary of our results from 2020 to 2022. Oh, thank you for your attention and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Jing.
much, Letitia.
It's really impressive, the results you had been showing. It's we can see the impact, and yeah, that's really. I'm looking again. I took up a print screen and I'm looking at the impressive results. So also this is an invitation to all ecolabels to measure their impact also.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. And now I would like to give the floor to Gareth Johnston. Thank you, Gareth,
Thanks.
for
How are you?
being here and for sharing also Jen, the Global Ecolabeling Network point of view on this topic. I know it's really a topic of interest for you and your members, so we are really also happy to hear you.
Thanks, Letitia. And I'd just like to also compliment the two previous speakers. In our impact assessment report that we've been running over the last year, China has produced the most comprehensive assessment together with India. So you've heard from some of the experts tonight, and I'd also like to echo some of what the Eco Institute team have said, and you'll see some commonality in slides. So good evening from me. My name's Gareth. I'm based in Australia. I work on the Gen Secretariat, and it's my pleasure really to talk through some of the perspectives from Gen on Ecolabels. For way of background, I'm been working over 3 decades in sustainability. I came out to green the Sydney Olympics originally. I've worked in predominantly corporate strategy around sustainability. I've worked in 8 jurisdictions in terms of reporting, but many more in terms of both climate and environment. My role with Gen is to coordinate our members. We've currently over 40 members covering 60 countries, and about another dozen countries setting up their own domestic labels. Melissa, I might just ask if you could put my presentation on, and we'll drive from there, please. Thanks, Melissa. Great. Thank you. You can move through to the next one. Thank you. Great. So we're a 30-year-old US incorporated membership body. As I said, representing 40 members covering 60 countries and growing. We're governed by a 10-director board from Ecolabels in China, EU, India, North America, Thailand, Russia, Ukraine, and Singapore. I run part of the Global Secretariat functions from Australia. We have an Americas Secretariat, and in 2025, an EU Secretariat responding to European government's green claims and other directives. We have a General Administration Office in Japan, and our current chair is Giri, based in India. So clearly a global entity. Thanks, Melis. So I'll just quickly introduce what a Type 1 ecolabel is. We heard from Eco Institute about Blue Angel. Blue Angel was initially considered in 1972 and then set up in 1977. So one of the world's longest running and very successful ecolabel, and German government continue to be both a thought leader and a key supporter of GENS. I've spent the last month interacting with German government, GIZ in particular, in Asia, with their very successful programs, of which UNEP is also a part. Our other significant, I guess, ecolabel, our largest ecolabel, is the EU flower, and the EU flower has nearly 100,000 product categories, so very significant. We're governed predominantly by the ISO 1424 standard, and that sets out a key definition of what a Type 1 ecolabel is. You can read that yourself, but essentially it gives us independent verification, multiple environmental criteria, a full life cycle approach, and third-party verification. And that's very critical because we see quite a few fake and false claims, fake labels, and meaningless labels often, unfortunately. Next slide, please. Thank you. I noticed a section of this report in the previous public presentation, but this is out this week. It's a planetary boundary map, which is connecting the key planetary boundary terms in this case. So common language showing connectivity between the various challenges that we're responding to. And the good thing is that Type 1 ecolabels connect to every one of these issues. So from social criteria, as China had previously mentioned, through to economy, food systems, environmental pollution, land management, ecosystem stability, water, healthy diets, and I'd probably add to that circular economy issues moving forward. Thanks, Melis. This was covered previously by Eco, but essentially we're looking at both the direct environmental benefits as well as the life cycle benefits. There's been a very strong and necessary movement over the last 20 odd years, and I've been part of that and made a living in both carbon and climate reporting, climate risk disclosure. But often corporate and government reports tend to focus very narrowly on CO2e or on other aspects. The benefit of an eco label is we look at all material elements connected to that class of product, and we go into significant life cycle assessment detail to ensure that we've got metrics on that product. Next slide, please. And we use a measurement framework. The previous example identified a baseline performance, and we aim to document a class average performance. We look at historical data, and we look at the regulatory requirements. And those are critical because similar to an emissions reduction methodology, we're looking to improve ecolabels on an ongoing basis. So it's not good enough just to sit there and have your ecolabel meeting that performance. We encourage and enforce, as the Global Ecolabeling Network, an improvement over time across all the areas, and each of our members is assessed for compliance in that area. I talked about the impact areas. Obviously, the climate in terms of ton CO2 is a critical item and often much more measured than other components. And again, I just refer you back to the CEC's report. It's probably one of the most detailed I've seen, and really clear methodologies. Water, kiloliters saved, again, on quality improvement is a critical criteria, and you'll see more of this as natural capital accounting starts to flow. Task Force for Nature starts to flow into both government and corporate reporting. I have to say the failure of COP16 makes ecolabels even more important, a part of the solution. Biodiversity in terms of hectares protected and species preserved has traditionally been a difficult criteria, but again, natural capital accounting is starting to flow through and allow that to be captured. Resources in terms of tons material saved and pollution are obvious. There's an increasing assessment of circular economy starting to come in under tons material reused or diverted. Thank you. Next, please. So as a Type 1 ecolabel working to 1424, we require all our labels require to follow scientific evidence-based performance. Ecolabels themselves assess their licensees' verification. We look at performance and data collection methods. Increasingly, data collection is now being used through machine learning. We can assess patterns and changes in behaviors in that performance. And the sensors and IoT is starting to play into data collection as well. I mentioned impact monitoring systems earlier, and again, technology is starting to play a role in that. Life cycle assessment standards are being improved all the time, and approaches both by Ecolabels, academic and research experts, such as those from Eco Institute tonight, UNIP as a critical partner of GEN, and others continue to lift that life cycle assessment approach. We look for the documented improvements, and I mentioned the Genesis scheme rules. Those are our own methodologies for compliance, and we're improving and releasing those for 25 in the next couple of weeks. I'm an ex-sustainability assurance reporter, so I also look for completeness, materiality, accuracy, relevance, and timeliness of data. And again, AI and machine learning is starting to improve and assess incomplete or immaterial data that's starting to show up. And the verification frequency is critically important. The dire situation that both the natural environment and the climate is in requires that we increase the efforts to improve both ecolabels and product disclosures, and that requires then an increase in verification. Thanks, Melis. Tracking and reporting is critical, and GEN this year has launched a impact reporting framework project. We're pleased to be working with the German government on developing improvements in tracking and reporting. It's critical for key stakeholders such as corporates, sustainable public procurement programs, governments who are looking to use ecolabel data in both NDCs and in their national biodiversity strategies and action plans. But also it's important for sovereign countries at a higher level to be able to correlate data and improve parts of their economy using that data. Cost savings are important. I think the signal from ECO was also around cost efficiency. The ecosystem benefits can now be measured through that natural capital accounting methodologies and market transformation indicators. We're starting to see sustainability indicators, sustainability skills indicators, and therefore market demand and transformation indicators starting to flow through as part of economic reporting, certainly here in Australia. Annual performance reports are important to track directions and trends, and certainly GEN is working on developing that theory of change and a measurement framework. And then ultimately we need to talk to our community. One of the things that I'd like to see better is an improvement in communications to all our stakeholders, from governments to manufacturing to consumers. I try and model some of those practices myself. I try and form myself through data sets and labels. I live off-grid in a, I guess, a 100% solar powered home. My transport comes from the same electricity I generate off my roof. But even as an educated professional in this space, it's still a very tricky and difficult minefield to navigate, and one that Ecolabels makes a lot easier. Next, please. So success metrics are part of that communication. Each of those can be mapped as a trend, and importantly for governments and for consumers is the cost savings and return on investments. So I think that's close to the end for me, but keen to answer some questions. There's a case study here that I'll make available just as an example. You can click through. Just looking at the different collection of data. Quick few seconds on, I guess, the technology. If you can go back one slide, please, Melis. Just to look at where future development will improve both ecolabels and data capture. The ISO standards 1424 currently under review. Jen has input through both a mirror group and through professionals sitting in that group. Harmonization efforts are very important. We've signed quite a few mutual recognition agreements recently. I'm working on another one at the moment between Singapore and Japan, which will be announced next week at the COP. And Japan has been very successful signing up with Sri Lanka recently. That drives trade, economic benefits, environmental benefits. The role of digital passports and AI and natural capital accounting I've touched on previously. But importantly, all this comes together for credible reporting, international compatibility, market recognition, risk management, and continuous improvement. That's all for me for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Thank you. And I see we are slightly running out of time because we have the final video record of EPIT from Catherine Larocque. So please, Maëlys, I would be glad if you could share the video with us. And then we can see the great example of EPIT, who has been really impressive also, not only in measuring the impacts, but in sharing it. If you have a look at their website, you will see how you can easily measure the impact if you are purchasing a product that has been certified by EPIT. Maëlys, I don't know if you can share the video. Yes, I think it's working. Thank you very much. So, Maëlys, at least on my side, I cannot hear the sound. So perhaps if you share again, and yeah, I think you need to select one specific option. And meanwhile, also as a comment from what we've heard and the comments in the chat, I think obviously one key aspect is the data, how to have access to data. And there is a lot that is also being done, being developed. We've heard about the digital product passport, and this is also something that at UNEP we're really keen to develop and to harmonize, because we see several initiatives on digital products passport, or more generally speaking, on global standards for consumer sustainability information. And this is something that the community as a whole working on these topics needs to work on and to mainstream. Maëlys, is it possible to share the video again?
Yes,
Yeah.
let me try
Okay.
to share it.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Larocque, and I'm the Director of Ecolabels and Resources at the Global Electronics Council. I'm really excited to be speaking to you today about the impact of the EPIT Ecolabel, so thanks very much for having me. Before I dive right into EPIT, I thought it might be useful to first remind everyone what Type 1 ecolabels are, because I know not all of the participants today are actually ecolabeling practitioners. I often refer to type 1 ecolabels as the easy button when I'm speaking with purchasers, and I'm very passionate about the fact that credible ecolabels can make their jobs so much easier. It's important to understand that not all ecolabels are created equally. They range from credible type 1 ecolabels to single-issue self-declaration labels that are not necessarily as rigorous or independent. Type 1 ecolabels really are the gold standard when it comes to ecolabeling, and there's actually an ISO standard that outlines very specific requirements for type 1 ecolabels, some of which I have highlighted on the screen. As an example, type 1 ecolabels like EPEAT must have an open, transparent, multi-stakeholder consultation process to develop criteria. Type 1 ecolabels must address the impacts across the full life cycle of the product or service, from raw material extraction through to manufacturing, use, and end of life. And they also require independent verification to ensure that the products meet the criteria initially and on an ongoing basis. Lastly, the criteria must be rigorous, science-based, and represent sustainability leadership. These measurable, science-driven criteria are crucial because they establish thresholds, and it is because of these thresholds that EPEAT is able to measure impact. Before I get into how we measure our impact, I wanted to provide a quick overview of EPEAT for those of you who might not be familiar with it. EPEAT is the leading global ecolabel for electronics and technology products. It is owned and operated by the Global Electronics Council, a mission-driven nonprofit dedicated to achieving 100% sustainable electronics by 2050 for everyone, everywhere. EPEAT was established in 2006 and has roughly 4,800 unique products that can be found in the EPEAT registry. Over 60 companies participate in the program, with products registered in 46 countries across the 7 product categories that you can see in the green box on the screen. The registry itself is an online platform that lists all EPEAT registered products. It is freely available to anyone, so I encourage any of you that might be interested in learning more to visit epeat.net to do so. As we all know, ecolabels have to address priority sustainability impact areas across the full life cycle of the product. EPEAT does this by developing criteria across 4 key priority areas, including climate change mitigation, circularity or sustainable use of resources, chemicals of concern, and responsible supply chains or corporate ESG. Again, I'd like to emphasize that because our criteria set thresholds and have very specific requirements, we have been able to measure impact. Our criteria are fairly unique in driving requirements further up into the supply chain, where the most significant impacts often occur. And this has helped to drive consistency in requirements for the brands and their supply chains, making data reporting more integrated and aggregated as well. So that's another important, yet more intangible impact of EPEAT. On this slide, I've identified some emerging trends and challenges we see for sustainable electronics and ICT. And we are tackling these issues by including specific criteria in EPEAT to drive impact across those global supply chains. EPEAT is looking at impacts in even more highly measurable ways. And as an example, we now have an embodied carbon threshold for solar panels, which means that as a purchaser, you can actually calculate the carbon emissions for a solar installation. And through our new climate criteria, we're helping to drive data collection and inventory calculations that use standardized and consistent methodologies and require public reporting of the data. In terms of climate mitigation, no other ecolabel for electronics has this advanced level of science-based and ambitious criteria for mitigating climate change impacts. And we highlight these achievements on the EPEAT registry through a product designation called EPEAT Climate Plus. The perception that sustainable products are more expensive than conventional ones remains a key barrier to sustainable procurement. And that's because sustainable procurement requires a really transformative shift in mindset and in the way you measure the cost of your purchases. It has to shift from prioritizing the lowest cost to purchasing products that offer the best value for money. To this end, we make the EPEAT Environmental Benefits Calculator freely available to help organizations demonstrate the impact of their sustainable procurement decisions and to communicate the impact to stakeholders in a compelling way. To use the calculator, all you have to do is enter the number of EPEAT registered products you purchased and select your country or region. You will then receive data that tells you the environmental impact reductions associated with those purchases across several metrics. However, that's not all. The calculator can also measure the benefits of extending the product life and reusing and recycling the equipment. So this allows a purchaser to test different scenarios and see the impact, for instance, of keeping the product in service for an additional year or two. What you see on the screen now is just a few different screenshots of the calculator. As you can see in the bottom image, the calculator measures impact across several metrics, including cost savings, GHG and water reductions, energy savings, and hazardous and solid waste that was avoided, etc. In the smaller box outlined in blue, you can then see the corresponding equivalencies for each of these metrics to really help build a more compelling, relatable story. So instead of just having data that says, for instance, your purchases saved 5 million gallons of water, it also tells you that you saved enough water to fill 100 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Again, the calculator is freely available, so just go to epeat.net and click on Benefits Calculator. As you can see on this slide, we've been able to use our own environmental benefits calculator to estimate the benefits associated with global purchases of EPEAT registered products in any given year. And what you're seeing on the screen is the cumulative impact of global sales of EPEAT products from 2020 to 2022. We rely on annual sales data that manufacturers provide to us to prepare these estimates. And as you can see, the environmental benefits of EPEAT registered products on a global scale are really quite incredible. The 975 million EPEAT registered products that we estimate were sold between 2020 and 2022 resulted in a reduction of 94 billion tons of carbon, which is equivalent to taking 20 million cars off the road for a year. You can see the savings for all metrics on the right-hand side of the screen, and they really are quite staggering. Lastly, what you are seeing here are just a few examples of how different organizations are using the EPEAT calculator to report their impacts. The data the calculator provides can really help to build a compelling business case for your sustainable procurement program that executives and senior leaders within organizations are often looking for. So I would encourage all of you to check it out, especially if you are already buying EPEAT registered products. And with that, thank you all very much for your time. Should you ever have any questions about EPEAT, please feel free to reach out to me.
Well, we're coming to an end. Apologies for the slight delay, but I think we had really interesting presentation, and thank you to all our panelists. It was a pleasure to have you here. And thanks for turning on your camera. Perhaps just on my side, a few really quick closing words. So I think because I'm reading all the comments, all we hear, and there is a lot on the issue of data and yes, indeed, this is really complex. This first webinar was really to raise awareness and to invite you all to start this road on how to measure the impact of ecolabels, of certification schemes. But indeed, if we want to go into more details, there are many questions, but here we are also speaking about estimations, and we cannot lose ourselves also in detailed data that's as of today does not exist. So we also need to take this into account. As I said and wrote in the chat, we will organize a workshop really on this topic where all the questions that you have brought will be discussed much more in detail. This workshop will take place in Brazil in July 2025. The exact date still needs to be defined, but we will inform all participants that have been registering to this webinar so that you will be aware, and you are obviously all more than welcome to join us in this workshop. I'm also thinking, looking at the interest on this question, that within the Consumer Information Program, we could create a kind of community of practice, of certification schemes, of ecolabels, willing to share and exchange on this topic, because each one of us on our side, we have the same questions, and often it's really useful also to share them, to discuss, to see how others have been working on this and what solution they have found to their challenges. So thank you to all our panelists. That was a pleasure to have you today. Many, many thanks. And thank you also to all participants for staying with us, for listening to us. And we are looking forward to exchange more on this topic, and inviting you through the Consumer Information Program and our newsletter to stay connected. Thank you very much, everyone. Wishing you a nice evening, day, and end of the week. Thank you.